our discussion on classroom management. I am live from my basement. So this is one of my favorite topics, one of my favorite topics to talk about. And then also, not only my favorite topic to talk about, but something that I think we need to talk about in person, or synchronously. Because classroom management, yeah, you're going to touch on it in, you'll touch on it in methodology, but you don't really, depends on the classes when you really get to talk about it. So I think it's I like those two videos to use as a starting point, and we're going to go wherever the conversation lets us. I'm okay with wherever it goes, but I'll start with what do you think about? Let's go Mr. Grimes first. 1947. What do we think about Mr. Grimes?
Horrible.
Very rude.
Okay.
Condescending.
Okay.
Very condescending, yes. His demeanor definitely set the tone with the students.
Okay.
We have a few Mr. Grimes at Dickerson where I teach.
Oh, wow.
Bad classroom management is a part of bad teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pose this question to you, and I don't want an answer now, but I want you to think about this. Okay? You have to hire a teacher. Okay, and this is what we did. This is what we did an alternate route for the whole year. Content master or classroom manager? If you had to pick, which one do you want? I want you to think about that. You want a content master or a classroom manager? We'll come back to that. So why don't you like Mr. Grimes? You guys just threw him under the bus.
Well, I mean, he's making the kids scared. He's failing to connect with the students, failing to get them to understand why they need to learn. He's using excessive punishment. He doesn't seem to be connecting with the kids at all and teaching them why they need to learn.
Okay.
Kind of reminds me of the substitute teachers we used to pick on in elementary school.
Okay. But why is it I mean, you saw some of the students, like acting out, cut-ups, making fun of Mr. Grimes. Why? Why were they doing that?
Because they weren't engaged.
They didn't respect him.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, he was more so trying to instill fear, and that tactic doesn't work. So
he also told them they're the worst class he's had in a long time. Hi, by the way, sorry.
Okay. Hi, Mary. Thanks. You know what? Do you want to be? Do you want your students to be afraid of you?
No.
And I'm not looking for a right answer. I'm not looking for a right or wrong answer. I'm throwing it out there. Do you want your kids to be afraid of you?
It's like being a mother. You walk a fine line.
Yeah,
I don't want them to be afraid.
I think when you have that level of respect, you don't have to worry about the disrespect. You don't need them to fear you, because as long as they respect you, they'll abide by the rules.
Mm.
Okay. How do you get the kids' respect?
By giving it to them
Setting
first.
ground rules.
You have to give a respect, earn respect.
Yes, it's earned, not given. So
Okay.
you have to create that bridge with the students. You want to earn their trust, and you just speak to them in the tone that you want them to speak.
But I also think it's important to set boundaries.
Yeah.
Like
making
what?
sure you know what, let them know what you expect from them. And if they don't do that, then maybe there are some consequences, not screaming and yelling at them, but, like with the little ones, I talked about like the prize box when they're good versus, if they're not good, they go on a different color. I mean, it's just very basic. I just don't think screaming at them ever works.
And also punishing without teaching them what they did wrong and how they can improve it. Because I think in the second example, like the second version of it, he really goes through. Well, I mean, and he admits also. I thought that was a good point that he admits. Well, maybe I didn't teach it out very well because clearly I wasn't effective because I didn't, you guys didn't get it. So let's go over it and figure out why, and then learn from that and move on. And I think that was a much better, obviously, way to do it.
Wouldn't that imply weakness as a teacher if you said I didn't do it right?
Nope, nobody knows everything, and as a teacher, you're absolutely not ever like, especially in this day and age. You're competing with the internet. They can Google the information probably faster than you can teach it to them. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but you have to compete with the web. So you have to. If you don't admit, of course, you're not going to be an expert in everything, but you can teach together. You can learn different things, and then you can learn from the students too. It has to be a two-way, otherwise I don't think you're ever going to get respect from the kids.
Just sorry, another thing that was brought up in another class I'm in is that nowadays with technology and having phones in the classroom, if you yell at the students in a really bad way, that can be recorded on Snapchat, let's say, and then maybe used against you. So teachers nowadays have to be mindful of what's going on.
Yes, and I'm going to use my prerogative. I want to. First of all, in 1991, when I was a freshman at Bergen Catholic, there was a kid in my homeroom that had a beeper. And what was the first thing we all said about this kid Kyle who had a beeper? If you're my age, come on. If you're I'm 38, so if he had a beeper in 1991, what was he?
He was drug dealer.
He was a drug dealer. That's the right answer. That is the right answer. In 1991, if you're old enough to know, it was against the law. It was against the law in New Jersey to have a beeper at a school if you were a kid, because it meant you were a drug dealer. And now you've got, Mary makes an excellent point, because now you've got every kid that's got a phone. Okay. Now, and I got to tell you, I now really have to think, if I'm going to lose it, I got to think about the repercussions, not only of what's happening live, but what potentially may be recorded that I'd have no idea what's being recorded.
Yeah, but if you can't if your behavior is such that you can't afford for it to be released, I mean, if it can't be public, should you really be behaving like that in the first place?
True.
But you know what? You never know the full circumstances of the situation. Yeah. And where they might just get you at that heated moment where everybody else might not know the full situation. So I would agree and disagree to that.
Go ahead. But as you're talking, Google Fair Lawn special ed teacher fired, and you'll see my point. There's a video up there on it happened about a year and a half ago. It was a teacher in Fair Lawn. It was a special ed teacher. He went on a rant, and he pretty much told the kid, go cry to your counselor, and he got fired. So just there's been issues of that. And you don't know what happened 5 seconds before. You don't know what happened 5 seconds after. But you've got that frozen window of time. If you're in the classroom now, you know when your buttons get pushed. And there are times where, I could tell you the last time I lost it was probably in October of this year, and I wasn't in the classroom. I was in the hallway, and it became, I had a kid want to go toe-to-toe with me, and I just I can't believe it didn't get recorded, because I probably would have gotten fired. But you really have to be careful. You have to think about how am I going to discipline, how am I not going to discipline, because it's not like when I went to school, I just got yelled at. It wasn't, you didn't think twice about it. But now there's you really have to think as a teacher. I have to almost think about, how am I going, if X happens, how am I going to react to that? If Y happens,
does that make you a better teacher?
Yes.
It was different for the and for the teacher. Now they don't have whatsoever the backup from the top to bottom. So the teacher is exposed. Backup. Even if you try to do the best to explain or whatever with them, but according to just get beat. Use it. The best key and the best you count. Just we give the special, we give and or give a gun. My advice, just everything.
It's a very it's a fine line. There was, when I took a class, ironically it was in supervision, we talked for a little bit about primary reflection, secondary reflection. Meaning, primary reflection, you're a teacher, on the go, you're changing things on the fly. Did this work? I'm going to change my strategy right now. And then that secondary reflection, like, I'm driving home, I'm going out for a run, I'm in the shower, whatever it is, I'm thinking about, what did I do today? And as a teacher, that's a constant. You're constantly evaluating yourself. And I think in some cases you have to be prepared ahead of time. If at least have an idea, if this happens, how am I going to react to this? Because I think you don't want to think about it the first time it's happening. Now, you can't possibly prepare for everything, but I think you at least need to consider, well, what if a kid,
You are
what if I get a defiant, student who's defiant, or it says, no, I won't do this. Okay, excuse me. How am I going to react to that?
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Whatever you just one little words, just light out. It can be big case.
But if you could disconnect all the headphones, shouldn't I hear it through the computer?
Yes, you should, but I don't know why it's not working.
You have to log out of Skype.
Oh, you're on fucking Skype?
I'm not on Skype. I'm not even logged into it. I can't close out of this.
That's great.
You know what? I'm gonna get up and walk away in about 2 minutes. Fuck it.
Nothing like this is
Put
this
your
is
headphones
live.
back on.
You'd never have this in a classroom.
You
so,
record
yeah.
every day, and you don't know how to fix the sound?
Well, I never did that before. I never changed whatever you're doing. So.
Guess what? You're not going to be recording much longer. I'm taking my computer back.
Another example of everything you do might be being recorded.
There you go. And you know what? 2009. We've been a one-on-one laptop school since 2002. 2009, with Audacity when it first came out, we had kids that were starting to, well, let's rile up the teacher, let's record it, and let's put it on. At the time, I guess it was MySpace, because really before Facebook. And let's try and rile up the teacher. And now, like I said, I laugh at everything. I have to, and because I do it at home too, it gets me in trouble. I have to laugh at everything because there's no other, I'm not sure what else, because if I go crazy, like I said, I run the risk that, somehow it's recorded, somehow I got to answer for it. So.
Volume on the keyboard.
What is the school administration helping you or supporting you? Like, what do they do? Are you left alone out there with all the kids? If you have, a class that is so completely out of control, do you get any help, any resources whatsoever?
Remind me, who's in the classroom now? Who's teaching now? Wave at the camera. Who's teaching now? John, Sean. Do you get support from administration?
We have a whole team of people that would help out if we had discipline issues that were that serious. We have crisis intervention teachers who just do that all day long. They don't have classes. They just, handle situations like that. We have some vice principals that are really engaged in discipline. We have 5 of them because we have almost 3,000 kids in the building. So, there's usually somebody available if you have an emergency that you can't handle, inside your own room.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to say at Paramus Catholic, there are very few opportunities that you have a bad event. But if there was a bad event, the administration is very supportive. And very rarely do we have outbursts in Paramus Catholic.
Okay. Now, you know what? If you're a teacher, now this is one of those where there's different schools of thought. My advice has always been, and I still think it is, I would never, and I never did this, and I'm in my 17th year of right? Yeah, 17th year of education. I've never once called.
Well, then shut the fucking computer down. Log off. Log off and start it again. I'm going to walk away. I'm fucking pissed.
Okay. I would never call the dean. I would never call a vice principal, because as soon as I did that, the boys at Bergen would just smell the fear, and they're like, we're going to jump all over that. So unless it was something like really, really bad, I'd settle my own problems. I'd solve my own problems, because I knew that for me it shows weakness as a teacher. Now there's some places where if you're unionized, they might say, hey, as soon as there's something, you call XYZ, whatever, but I would never let someone else handle my own problems. I always handle my own problems.
And you don't want to give control of your class to another person. I mean, you're the person who wants to have control of his class.
Yeah.
And it's your prime responsibility to keep that control.
Yeah.
So I think I've called the administration maybe twice this year. But as a general rule, I try to handle my own discipline problems without calling the administration.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been times I've been called into classrooms, because I've been, either I've been a passerby or, because now this year I didn't have any classes, and I run our school's laptop program, but and I think part of what lets me get away with things is I'm an alum of the school. So, and I've also got this persona that or the perception is that I'm a less than desirable human being. I'm just really just a nice guy, but my persona comes across as a little different because you're not going to get anywhere where everybody's handing you stuff and it's, oh yeah, it's okay, you just keep yelling at the teacher, that's fine. So you get tough love from me. So that gets me into trouble, but at the same time, I don't my philosophy and part of what I think you should come away with tonight, and you're not going to have to be able to define it, but you ask, everyone's going to ask you, what's your educational philosophy? That's great. Your teaching philosophy. What's your discipline philosophy? And I want you to think about that. What is your philosophy on discipline? From someone who is, who's making obscene noises to doesn't do their homework to whatever the case is. What do you do with that? And how do you feel about that? Is your first answer to give detention or whatever your initial infraction thing is? Think about that. Think about, what do I do? How do I feel about discipline? Because I got to tell you, I was one that used to give detention all the time. Now I don't even bother, because it's not like detention is going to deter bad behavior, or prevent it from happening again. But I've got my own ways to deal with things. So.
I think good teaching prevents bad behavior. If you have an engaging class, a connection in class, I think you're less likely to have bad behavior issues.
1,000% right. If you're planning lessons that are engaging kids, that's the first line of defense against bad behavior in your class. I think kids that are working, kids that are interested, are kids that are not going to be throwing paper across the room and playing on their cell phones. I mean, that's what I've seen in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Engagement's a key word there.
Can I bring up something though?
Absolutely.
I've done Jeopardy with students before at the same time, or like with kids in church. At the same time, I've had kids get so heated in games that it can be very hard to control because they're having fun. So
sure.
It can happen.
I mean, when I say engagement, I don't mean fun. I mean just differentiation of instruction so that they're interested. Mr. Grimes stood in front of the room and he just talked, and either you get it or you don't. There is no middle ground. There is no group of kids in the back of the room who are struggling, who are working together. He's just standing there talking. And, by engagement, I don't mean fun. I just mean, planning lessons that are interesting. Pushing buttons that would, get a reaction out of a kid to maybe remember something that he otherwise wouldn't remember, or
maybe having a debate where it would go between the kids back and forth, and you can be, on the sideline moderating it versus you being involved where they would be yelling at you.
Yes.
Our whole teaching model, I mean, we use the Danielson model, and that's a huge piece of it. Stepping away from the lesson and letting kids engage with themselves. The teacher not just talking for 40 minutes, but being a facilitator. Setting up groups.
What was the name of that method you said?
We use the Danielson model. It's an evaluation model that the vice principals use when they come in our rooms to evaluate us. And I mean, it centers on the kids taking ownership of the class. The lessons, the group activities. The teachers are just facilitating the activities and just stepping back and letting the kids engage with themselves. And that's how the learning is supposed to go. That's how you get the highest scores. When principals walk in the room and they see you not just standing there talking or showing a video, they see you walking around to 2 or 3 different groups in the room that are working on 2 or 3 different things at the same time. And, you're kind of just coaching them through it as opposed to teaching for 45 minutes and just talking at them.
Can't do it. Just let it be.
So, one of the episodes they were talking about spanking. Is that legal in New Jersey?
Yeah, well, it said several states are legal.
Not in New Jersey, but there's almost, I think it's like 19 or 20 states that allow it.
Because we did a story once on this kid where a principal or headmaster was paddling the kid, and the dad had actually signed an agreement that the principal was allowed to do that. But the mom was the one. The reason we did the story was because the mom did not agree, and the parents were divorced, I believe. So how do you handle situations where you have maybe parents who don't agree on how the students should be allowed to be taught or disciplined? Like, how would you deal with that?
I think it's who has legal custody.
Well, I mean, corporal punishment is illegal, so the father can sign whatever he wants, and it doesn't matter. You can't put your hands on a kid. You know, you
Not
can't
in
use
all
the
states.
body as.
In 19 states, you can.
Unless, yeah, I was just going to say, in 19 states, Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Idaho,
Yeah,
Indiana,
this is
Kansas,
Mississippi.
Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, of course, Texas, and Wyoming.
Yeah.
In many places, parental permission is required. It is most prevalent in Texas, less prevalent in Wyoming. The last state to abolish was New Mexico in 2011. So, yeah, there are still 19 states that allow corporal punishment. And some you need the parents' permission, but in some it's just, you know, like in the Northeast, we would think that's like, oh my God, that's awful, you know. But in Texas, it's just, you know, beat the kid. That's it.
I think if you get to the point where you're beginning to hit kids, I think you really passed the point of no return. I think
Yeah, but this was like part of what the school philosophy was. If you did X, Y, and Z, you know, your parents, in this case, only the father had signed an agreement. Yes, the headmaster is allowed to take the kid into the principal's office and do the paddling however many times, you know. And then the reason it became a news story was because the mom had not agreed, and they had joint custody. So it was just, but in that was the discipline of the school that the parent had agreed to. So I just found that very interesting. I don't agree with it, obviously, but I just found it very interesting.
Yeah. So what else about any other some thoughts about Mr. Grimes? Maybe his the second half of his video, his improvement, you know. And granted, this was for show, you know, but things you could relate to, things you might want to try, things you would do differently.
I like his use of humor.
Yeah, agreed. No, go ahead, keep going.
I just like the way that he took it into that sense, and kind of used it as a form of punishment, but not really. It's like kind of embarrass the kid, but not really at the same time.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good way to say that, because there are times I know I do that, and it's a very fine line about, you know, all your students want attention, whether they say it or not. They want attention. You know, that's part of being a kid. They want attention. So if there's a way that I could do that, and if I could do that and be funny about it, you know, it works, you know. And it's that Grimes, he's a good egg, you know. That's what you're trying to do, you know. I this year in April, we had a shifted personnel, and I had to end up taking 4 classes till the end of the year that weren't my classes to start with. And the prevailing attitude of the junior class was, this is going to be terrible. Spiegel is just, it's awful. Like they were like, this is going to be the worst thing. And then after about a week or so, the word on the street was, oh, this really wasn't that bad. Yeah, because I had 2 choices. I could go in there and just be like, you know what, I don't want to be here, so I'm going to make you suffer. Or I could, you know what, let's make the most of this. Now, if that was me 10 years ago, I would have made him suffer. Because if I'm miserable, so are you. But I think as an educator, I've grown in that, you know what, let's make the best of the situation that we're in. So I think there's a lot of, you have to be a reflector. You really have to reflect on, and really, how do you see yourself as a teacher? You know, how do you want to be? You want to be the one that is a yeller and a screamer? Do you want to be the first half of the Mr. Grimes video? You want to be the second half of the Mr. Grimes video? You know, I think that's important. You really have to think about, you know, how do you want to be? How do you see yourself? And that's not going to happen overnight. I think it took me 2 years teaching full time to really find my stride in terms of discipline, in terms of managing the classroom, preparation, all that kind of stuff.
Is it recommended to like be assertive in the beginning, and then as the year goes on, just to take your foot off the gas pedal a little bit?
There's an old saying, don't smile until Christmas. But I think that's a little bit past its time. I don't think it's like that anymore.
I agree. I've heard that. I've heard don't smile till Christmas. And you know what? I want to be somewhere between their best friend and their worst nightmare. And I don't know where that is. And for every class I've taught, it's different. And I tell you, it's different as in, I mean, it's like I sway a little bit, and it's off. I try to find that balance of where do how I might have two classes I teach period back to back, and one class I could be jovial, but the other one I have to be much more stringent. Now, I teach junior high CCD. I don't know why, but junior high is a very interesting age group. I'm very different with junior high than I am with when I do high school, than when I do undergraduate, than when I do graduate. So I have an identity crisis because depending on the classroom or the student that are in front of me, is how I have to be.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to assess the students and then just react. You would react to how they are.
I had a professor in college say to the class, he goes, the first thing out of his mouth was, "I know what you're thinking right now. You want to know if I'm a nut." And he goes, "You know what I'm thinking right now? How many of you are nuts?" And that's how we started the class. And he was right, because I want to know, is this guy going to be good or is he going to be crazy? And just, in reverse, he wants to know how many of us are, crazy. But you got that first day of class, to make that connection, with your students. So, do you not smile through Christmas? Perhaps, depends on the group. I'd say after a couple of days, you kind of get a feel for what's in front of you, and then you kind of you chart your way. I'm not sure I want to be totally lackadaisical, but at the same time, I've learned that I can discipline with a smile on my face. Because I can, but I couldn't do that when I first started teaching.
Why? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
We can hear you.
Oh,
Welcome
good.
back.
Yeah, as you can tell, I had some technical difficulties. But I totally agree with what you were saying. Absolutely. I had the same experience. I think just with experience and comfort zone, you have to definitely adapt yourself with whatever age group, or not even just an age group, but whatever particular group you have in front of you, and know how to alter your personality and alter your methods with whom you're dealing with. And absolutely, when I was teaching, I'm no longer a teacher now, but when I was teaching, in the beginning, I was totally different than the way I taught towards the end of my teaching career at the time, which was about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Definitely with experience, I feel that I was more confident, knew how to maneuver my children, and actually not just manipulate them too. At some point, you become a manipulator. You need to know who you're dealing with and how to get your student to do what you at the end of the day want them to do. Whether that's effective or not, it works, and definitely works with classroom management, especially with younger children. You have to adapt yourself with, middle school children as well as higher ed. Absolutely.
Agreed. You don't want to be a pushover, but at the same time, and there comes a time where, you realize, well, maybe I've been too stringent or too lenient, and you have to adapt. And you can't, who you are now versus who you are in a year could be totally different, and depending from day to day, from period to period, you might be totally different. It just depends on the group that you have in front of you. Now, any other thoughts about Mr. Grimes?
I thought it was interesting how he used real-world examples in their lives, like how they would bake a cake or use a drawing. I mean, obviously not really fitting in our time period, but the whole how many cups would you use?
Yeah.
So relating to them, obviously today you wouldn't do it that way. Maybe you wouldn't, split the boys and girls up. But I do think how he was trying to connect. I thought that was a good way of doing it.
There's an underlying perception that us teachers are not human. That the kids don't know what happens after 3 o'clock, but like we have televisions in our homes. I have a car. They have no concept So one of the biggest things when you can relate to them with anything, they think it's like, oh my God, you're human. Like you know, it's like an epiphany. My we have a TV station at you know, a glorified TV station that they do the morning announcements and stuff, and every day, you know, they'll pick out some music to overlay. So I've been a wrestling fan since I was a kid. I don't watch as much as I used to, but when I was a kid, I used to watch Hulk Hogan, all that stuff. So they put on John Cena's music, right? And I of course got in trouble, but I walked, you know, as soon as they finished, I didn't do it while they actually were broadcasting, but I walked up behind the kid who, you know, they were finishing the show, and I just went like this, and they were like, "This is the greatest thing in the world!" Like, "Oh my God!" Like, you know, like Spiegel knows, holy cow, you know. All I did was I couldn't keep a straight face, but they were just like thrilled, like, "Wow, you're human!" Like we had no idea. And the more you can relate to them in whatever the situation is, whatever you're trying to teach, they get it. Whether it's dropping a song lyric, whether it's, you know, you say something sports related, whether it's something about, you know, television, whatever, it's like, oh wow, you actually do get it. Like you'd be surprised, you know. And again, I always use the, you know, you know, after my name is my graduation year. So please don't tell me, oh, it takes forever to go from one side of the building to the other. I did it and had time to go to the bathroom, you know, like please, you know. And then they get, oh, wow, you actually do get it. I do, you know. And I think, like I said, all of a sudden you're a different person. You know, when you start to inject your personality into the classes that you teach, all of a sudden you're, you know, or when they see you outside of school, you know, it's especially in the mall or something, you know, it depends. Some of them will just run the other way and pretend not to know you. And some are just like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. Like I see kids that at the swim club we belong to, I'm up to three or four lifeguards that have gone through Bergen that are lifeguards at the pool, and it's like they, you know, some of them kind of, you know, hey, Mr. Spiegel, I'm like, dude, you've graduated, you're in college, you can call me Al, it's fine, and they look at me like I'm, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to yell at you, it's perfectly okay, you know, because I really, you know, Mister makes me sound old. And when you say professor, I think of the guy in Gilligan's Island. You know, I'm like, Alice, you can call me Al. It's fine. And they get, you know, and the kids who do that, they think it's the greatest thing in the world. But I'm like, I'm a human being, you know. And the same kids that I'm going to see potentially, you know, on the day after Labor Day, as students, they see me at the pool with my kids and my wife, and I'm like, you know, just a regular guy, you know. And I think, like I said, however you can interject that into how you teach, it makes a world of difference. And when you can pull something from real life, whatever it might be, it really does get the kids motivated. It's a good motivator.
Just speaking of the whole issue of this kids respecting you. So where I grew up, we addressed our teachers by first name.
God bless.
So that was very different from here, which I understand the most common here is Mr. and
Yes,
Mrs.
Kelly.
Is that how they do it?
I can find Anna and Elsa for you, honey. Of course I can. Yes, my love.
Go ahead, Maria. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I was just going back to the students respecting you, right? So do they usually call you Mr. and Mrs. Or would you recommend, because I went to a couple of classes where the teachers call themselves, call me Miss A, call me Miss Z, you know, like a little bit more casual. Do you think that would help to connect with the student, or is it better to keep it, you know, Mrs. Carlson or whatever, you know, they would call me? Like, as I said, I grew up with calling my teachers by first name, so it's very different.
Really? Because when it's funny, it was Mr. or Mrs. last name. That was it. You know, there was, and what's weird, like, you know, my kids in preschool, it was like Miss first name, Miss Erin, and Miss Peggy, and Miss, you know, which for me, like, I was correcting them, like, wait a minute, what's teacher's last name? Because that's just, you know, I tell my children. And I'm not one like this. I don't want to be called Mr. Spiegel, but I'm trying to teach my kids you never call an adult by their first name, because if I did it, I got the back of somebody's hand.
Yeah, well, see, that's something that's completely different from where I'm coming from, because there everybody is on first name except the king.
But for me, you ask any class. What did I tell you in the video? Al is fine. Like especially on the graduate, on the undergraduate level, that freaks some of them out. Like they're like, "What do you mean I can call you Al?" I'm like, Paul Simon, you can call me Al. It's fine. I call you Betty, you can call me Al. It's fine. And they still don't know what to do with that. There are, I'll tell kids that have graduated. I'm not like that. And I've always I don't know, respected or admired or whatever, but people who don't, who like, oh, you're here. My son had to have an endoscopy when he was like a year old, and the anesthesiologist came out, and he said, and he said, your mom and dad? I said, yeah, I'm Al Spiegel. He goes, I forget what his last name was. I'm Dave whatever. Not Dr. Such and Such, not, Your Royal Highness. I'm just a regular old guy. I happen to be a doctor, And I had professors in college that, wouldn't call me by my first name. Are you sure? Is this a trick? And that's where I got it from. Like, I don't, don't call me professor. It's fine if you call me Al. But that's a shift. When I tell my parents that, they think I'm off the wall. Like, how dare they say anything other than Mister? The kids at school, I get Speaks. I get my kids at work for me. I get boss. I get boss man. I get even the ones that are like really on that line, they'll call me Bert because my full name is Albert. They'll call me Bert. I'm okay with that. They're looking for like a like me to blow. I'm like, it's fine. When I introduce myself to prospective kids, like some second grade kid comes in, I say my name's Al. Like, because that's what it is. What my first name is not Mister. And yes, that's a shift. And that's for me. I was, like I said, I was brought up. It's Mr. or Mrs. or, God forbid, in Catholic school, it was brother. That's it. And if you didn't put the word brother in a sentence, forget
That's
it.
awesome.
You were going to public school. So, but I don't have a problem with it. But I'm trying to I want my own children to be respectful of others and not call other people by their first name. But at the same time, I'm like, as much as I'm instilling that, it sounds weird when I have other kids call me Mr. Spiegel. I'm like, I'm looking for my parents or like my father, my grandfather, somebody like, I'm not Mister. So that makes me, I might have to actually act older, or more mature.
Do you think when you get older, you'll want to be called Mister?
No,
Like older,
God,
older?
no. I have put, and I purposely, on my syllabus, I don't put Mister, I don't put Professor. I say instructor is either Al or Albert, depending on my mood, Spiegel. That's it. And there are people like, what do we call you? Yeah, it's fine. And if I could do it at Bergen, I'd let the kids go. I could care less. It really doesn't. And like if I'm in front of the kids, I will always address another faculty member as Mr. whatever. They might, but if they call me Al, I'm like, okay, it doesn't. Again, this is not like a barn burner, but what are we getting? Do we want the kids to learn? Do I want you as graduate students to learn or get hung up on what to call me? I'd much rather you learn, and feel comfortable with, who you're dealing with, as opposed to, I'm not someone that's on a pedestal, and I purposely try not to do that, and that's one of the ways that I try not to do it, So, if I was teaching second grade, like when I did my son's communion workshop, I did second grade way out of my comfort zone, way like I can't say like I'm talking and you're not, I can't do that with second graders. Have to remind myself, they call me Mr. Al, they call me Al, like, doesn't matter, does not matter at all, because they see like I just like, because everybody again, you're gonna, if you haven't figured out yet, I have no use for authority, okay, and I have no use for the norm. So everybody on their name tags has Mr. and Mrs. all that. I either cross it out and write Al, or I get another one, I just write Al on mine. Because I don't do the norm, I'm not a conformist, and I have a huge problem with authority. I'll admit that to nobody that's watching on YouTube right now, but yes, I'll admit that, But that's part of the culture that I want to, as a teacher, that's how I want to employ. That's what I want to do in my classroom, And there are some people, the kids somewhere, Speaks came about, and this was the first year I was teaching. I was at Holy Angels, and I got Speaks, and they're like, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, they're like, you mean we don't have to call you Mr. Spiegel? I'm like, No, it's okay, you know? And they thought that was the coolest thing in the world, you know? So it's all that what do you want to be? How do you want to be? What vision do you have of yourself in the classroom? And if you want to be Mr. or Mrs. or whatever, that's fine, but that's all part of it, and that's part of the stuff, especially if you're going into the classroom for the first time in September, or if you're going again back in the classroom. What do you want to be on the first day? Because those are different kids than last year. It's a clean slate. What do you want to be? How do you want to be? How do you want them to see you? What kind of culture do you want to set in that classroom? Where it's the respect thing. Once you establish that, oh, he's cool, or you know what, he's respectful, then you know what? I tell him, for example, you want to eat and drink? That's fine. What do you mean? You want to eat and drink? That's fine. No glass. Clean up after yourselves. You make a mess, it's done. I'll take it away from everybody. But, bathroom. You got to go? And I go, no, just go. Don't ask me. Just go. But if I find you doing laps around the building because, the toilet 3 bathrooms away is really comfortable, you're done. You can hold it. And Maslow goes out the window. And you know I'm serious, because then, but after I say that, I got to follow up on it. But
Correct.
I will. Like, you know what? You blew it. It's not me. Then it's not my fault. It's your fault. Because you guys, meaning an all-boys school, you guys, you blew it. So, I'm not. I used to have like pages of rules.
You gotta put that on.
Yeah.
So in that example, would that be if one person abuses it, everybody would lose their privilege?
I agree.
I like them to police themselves. Yeah, you know what? You're in this together. Because I'm not going to go. You could have it. You could have it. If it's good for everybody or good for nobody, and they're generally good about it. Did I tell you? And I forget who I tell stories to anymore. All the classes blend together. I was getting observed. I think it was this was last month I said the story. I was getting observed 2011, 2012. I had a class of 4. This was AP Computer Science. I had 4 kids, and the principal's in the room. And there was one kid that was just, I was like somehow trying to maintain my composure, because I'm like, out of all the days for you to act like a clown, you're doing it when the principal's here,
Of course.
And one of the greatest compliments that I got from a student, because I saw it, and I'm pretty sure the principal saw it too. The kid turned around, because I was in the back of the room, I guess, behind the principal, and the kid turned around and looked at the other kid and went. And the other kid was just like this. He was like, and even the principal, but that was it. And the kid stopped, and the lesson went. Now, I always look at that. That's one of my big, like, have I made a difference, or am I good with this class? Because they could have easily thrown me under the bus whenever I've gotten observed, So it was, that that was one of those classes that we were good. We were synchronous. There was, there was no like this. I didn't have to be. I could be my usual jovial self. And again, it's how do you see yourself? And I don't forgive me. I don't know what your chosen age groups or where you're going to teach, but how do you see yourself on day one? How do you want to be? How do you want to be like when they see you in the mall? Are they going to go, "Hey, Mr. Spiegel"? Are they going to be like, what are they going to do? And maybe that's the factor, because there are kids that, I see a public place, I'm like, oh, where do we get my parents? They're like, dude, like, oh God, So.
I mean, I agree. I think the school where I taught, when I first started teaching, there were 1 or 2 teachers that went by their first name, which I found interesting. So I went by my first name, and it wasn't Miss or Mrs. It was Ms. Olivet. So when I left the school, I started another. It was a private institution, and no one went by their first name. Everybody was, Miss, Mrs. Alvarez, Mrs. this, Mrs. that. So I kind of debated, but I liked going by my first name. I had one student that was maybe in like the 3rd grade at the time. I was teaching kindergarten, and she was at the new school where I taught. So right away, I'm like, you know what? I like being Miss Olivet. I've always been Miss Olivet, and that's what I'm going to be. And I was the only teacher in the school that went by their first name. And It was great, and you like you had mentioned, you can set that tone where you can be firm but yet be approachable and respected in the same way from day one. And I remember in the beginning, a lot of the older and the more senior teachers thought it was so out of form, especially it was a Catholic school, and so oh my gosh, how can you go by your first name? And then years later, I had students, parents that I see, I live local. I work local, so the first time anybody ever saw me at the Stop and Shop in a pair of sweatpants and a T-shirt, they were like, "Oh my God, Miss Olivet!" It's like, yeah, I eat too,
Yeah,
And
amazing.
then, once my students graduated, I had a few parents approach me and, "Oh, Miss Olivet," I'm like, "Please, just call me Olivet," and they looked
Yeah.
at me like, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
your name is Olivet?" Like they always
Yeah.
thought that was my last name. It's like, no,
Of course.
my name is Olivet. So. I totally agree. You can be that firm person, yet approachable, and it's all how you set that tone.
Yeah.
And the kids will feed off of it. I mean, you always get your wise guy, but overall, any age group. And I had the younger kids, younger to middle school students I taught, and it's always the same way. So I agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, and part of it, you got to think about that going, like I said, is preparing for the next school year. Who do you want to be? The 2020 video, when discipline goes too far.
Well, it was a really
Thoughts?
bad journalism example. 14 seconds on one side and 5.5 minutes on the other.
What do you mean?
Explain that, Maria, so I don't have to. Go ahead.
Well, basically, I think, maybe certain things were, maybe going too far, but you didn't even see the teacher story. There was no interviews with the school. As we mentioned in the beginning, you didn't even bring up how it came to be and what the background was. So
Yeah.
I just thought that was really, the kid with the burping in classroom, he was disrupting class, and what about the other kids? If he's, consistently disrupting, I'm sure it wasn't just the burping that, whatever, I can't remember what the punishment was, but I'm sure it wasn't just the burping that got him kicked out of class, but the way that it was presented, it was just very, very biased, in my opinion.
Okay, but what about the other girl? Like
Hey,
the other
girl.
girl, I think burping and being disruptive is
Callie Bear.
worse. But when we compare it to I think Alexa, whatever her name was, what about her story? Just writing on the desk, being arrested for that.
Yeah, but what,
How much more would we want to know that story?
Yeah, but again, there was no interviews with the school. We don't know if that was the only reason. That's just, what I'm saying.
No, it's definitely a fair point.
I think there's a resort to law enforcement too quickly. I think law enforcement should be the last resort to stop violence or severe disruption. But everyday occurrences of disruption in the class
I want to show you
are
something.
handled by a teacher, not the police.
Isn't there a story of a kid who brought like a fake gun
Daddy,
to school, and I think a police officer shot him, like a young kid?
Oh.
Hi.
Photo
I
bomber.
don't know.
Show her again.
We have a photo bomber.
Hi.
Say hi, babe. Yeah,
Nice.
all these
I think-
people can see you. Look. You see all these people? They can see you. Look.
Yes.
See?
Who are all these strange-looking people?
Say
The
hi,
guy with the
baby.
bald head.
Somebody
Al.
got past her bedtime.
Right.
Yeah.
Say hi, Mama. Look.
How old is
Right,
she?
right.
Like 2?
Yeah, she's 2.5. Yeah.
Oh, the real fun begins at 3.
That's my good girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2s are nothing. Terrible 2s. 3s are when it really, you'll
Yeah,
have
my
fun.
baby brother that you guys saw is 3.5.
What kind of videos are they going to be making when she's in school? I don't even want to think about it.
Me neither. My daughter is 6. She's a twin. Her and her brother are 6, and my oldest is 8. And yeah, I
That's my
don't want to.
teacher.
Yeah, I don't want them to
And
grow
all
up.
these people are in my class.
Baby said who's
Yeah,
See? This is my teacher. And all these other people are in my class.
yeah. I don't.
See them?
Hi.
And
Stay young.
Mary was just eating something that looked like grass.
Then when they grow up, you got to deal with.
Syrian dessert. It's called kanafa. He said I was eating
Look.
like grass.
Oh, good. Somebody asked. I was tempted. Like, wow, that looks pretty good. Whatever it is.
It's cheese and it's baked and it's very good.
That sounds delicious.
And syrup and stuff. Yeah.
I
Sorry, guys. I'm having dessert.
Go right ahead. I do agree with Maria that I think that you got it's one thing that if a kid burped, and like the writing on the desk, I look at it as someone's got to clean it.
Right.
You destroyed something. Do I
Right.
necessarily think you're going down in handcuffs? I don't know, but I don't have any use for discipline problems where either I have to do more work or someone's got to pay money as a result of a disciplinary infraction. I got a big problem with that.
I
But
mean, would 4 cops really show up to a school and arrest a child if that was the only thing they did?
Yeah.
Most of
So
the
you
cops
never.
in my town, they're like, don't call us unless it's something really important. Like, how many times they're like, you want to handle this? Or, hey, we caught these kids after the dance. They were around the corner smoking pot. You want to deal with this?
Oh,
Because
wow.
they'll only
Well,
deal with
smoking
it.
pot is illegal.
Yeah, but even
Right on
that,
the desk,
do you want to, it's a school thing. Do you want to deal with this before, and that depends on the relationship with your police department. But,
Absolutely.
do I don't know. In some places it might be totally appropriate to perp walk a kid out of the building. I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with that. But, there's I do agree that the journalism was very, well, what happened before and what happened afterwards? Because I've burped about 3 times in the last hour and no one's yelled at me yet. So it really, there's got to be something other than that. And that's one of those, let's rile up, oh, this is awful, this happens. Wait a minute. You know what? Let me see some facts and then let me decide for myself, because I'm not interested in something sensationalized and something like that where, oh, these kids are awful, or it's the teachers, or it's the whatever. Wait a minute, and maybe because I've been in the business a while, it's, no. Let's tell me the full story. Give me everything, and then I might say that kid was out of line or that kid was out of line. But I don't know, and I'm
But I
pretty
have a
sure you heard the
question.
word, you heard zero tolerance in there too.
Yeah.
It also goes back to the issue of controlling your own classroom, which I was talking about earlier. If you are turning your discipline over to the police to discipline your school, then you really lost control of your school, because that's a bad symptom that you have to use law enforcement. Now, I'm not saying don't use law enforcement when you need to, when someone's breaking the law or there's violence, but it's an extreme situation.
Now, I know John and Sean are in 2 demographically very different schools. I'm sure, Sean, you have a law enforcement presence on a daily
I mean,
basis.
I teach, just for you guys that don't know, I teach at, I'm a special ed teacher at Dickerson High School in Jersey City.
Oh, wow.
It's one of the biggest high schools in New Jersey. We have 5 full-time police officers that are there all day, every day. That's their post permanently. And,
Wow.
it's even at our school, where we have a lot of violence. I mean, we had a kid get shot on campus in December. We've had 2 stabbings. We had a kid get murdered in April. So, we're no stranger to violence. And even at our school, it's very rare that you see a kid get taken out the front door in handcuffs by the police. And when it does happen, it's because the kid did something pretty serious. So our police officers are there, in my opinion, just so everybody knows they're there.
Right.
The times that I can think of them dragging somebody out of the building cuffed, it's very, very rare. I think that what they do is more community policing. They're there to build a relationship with the kids. To teach kids that police are not someone you should be afraid of, not your enemy. Someone that you can go to if you have a problem outside school, if somebody's threatening you, or if someone is, making you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to go to your teacher, you can speak to the resource officer. So I like the fact that they're there. And if I were to call one of those cops down from the lobby and tell them that I can't control my class, they'd probably laugh in my face. So, they're
So it
trust me when I
sounds like
tell you,
you
they're
have
not
law
involved in
enforcement.
classroom management.
Yeah, it sounds like law enforcement's kept in perspective. It's an ancillary. It's an assisting thing.
Yeah.
They're there so
Teaching.
the parents, the kids, the teachers, we know they're there. It's with the school shootings obviously that have gone on, over the last 10 years. It's something that you have to have. You have to have somebody standing at that front door that can protect us.
That's a good job.
And with, obviously what's going on now with, Black Lives Matter and, people getting murdered by the police, I think it's good that we have, 1,000 African Americans who know 5 white cops by name, and are friendly
Yeah.
with them, and that trust them.
It's a good
And
point.
I think that that's the way we could solve some of these problems by, a lot of these kids are taught by their parents that when the police come, you need to hide or you need to run or, and that's not what we should be teaching kids. We have a lot of parents in our school, I think, that have had bad experiences in the past with the police. And, I think our resource officers are doing a good job of, teaching kids that they can trust the police.
And that was one of the comments that was made in the piece, was that they said that, oh, that issue should have been handled by parents. But in many cases, there are not parents around, and the parents don't have time, they can't do it, or a kid is, growing up without people in their lives who can, help them. So in that sense, that's great to have good role models in the school that can serve in different positions, not just teachers, but everybody around it too.
In local parentis, yeah, it is a legal thing.
It's not just for, it's not a college thing anymore. And loco parentis is really, it's totally applicable in K-12. And I like that, the term resource officer, when I was at my last school, we I guess the second year I was there, same thing. We had all of a sudden we've got a cop in the building. My first thought was, we don't need this. But, because I missed DARE by a year. Because when I was in 7th grade, they started DARE in the 6th grade. And the thing was, when this was in 1988, 89, when the cops came in the building, they would be unarmed. When they taught DARE, that was the thing that I remember being, specifically my parents being told that those cops would not be armed. So think about that. Think about in the late 80s that you had cops in uniform in the building without a gun belt on.
I
And
had DARE.
I missed it.
I still remember their names, the cops that taught me DARE.
I missed it by a year. But that idea of having the police as a resource, I think it really was helpful for, oh, hey, I got pulled over, or we're doing things like, well, if you get pulled over, what do you want to do? And it was then when we had dances and stuff, or we had things that required a police presence, we established a relationship. At the time, it was with the Denver Police Department, so we had a relationship with them. And we knew a lot of these, these guys, when if we got something happened at the school or whatever, it was a real nice partnership. And I agree with Sean. It makes, oh, hey, I know these guys, and these guys are, they're okay, and it's not just, they're not here just to, take a kid out in cuffs or whatever. They're here exactly as a backup,
I've actually used our police. I've actually used one of them as a reference in a lesson. I teach social studies. I'm an inclusion teacher in a social studies class, and towards the end of the year, we kind of run out of curriculum. We kind of get to the present day in U.S. history too, and we don't have much left. So for the last 2 weeks of the year, for the last 2 years, we've been teaching kids, how to interact with police during a traffic stop. How to keep your license and your registration and your insurance in one place, and to put it in your hands and keep your hands on the wheel and roll the windows down. And
that's great.
When you have a policeman talking to kids about things like that, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
We do role plays and stuff with the police where, we make the kids a cop, and the other set of kids are the 4 kids in the car. We arrange the desks in the form of a car, and the policeman gets a call of an armed robbery from a guy wearing a red shirt, and the kid in the front seat of the car is wearing a red shirt. So now the kid understands what it feels like to pull up to walk up to a car where you think somebody in the car has a gun. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful. And we actually had word got out that we were doing this, and somebody from our district central office came to videotape what we did, because they're thinking about making it a permanent part of the social studies curriculum.
It's great.
Wow.
So our cops, trust me, they're not just standing there drinking coffee in the lobby.
That's great.
They're engaged with our kids, and they're doing whatever they can to help us.
I worked at an alternative high school called Community Prep in Manhattan. Has anybody heard of that? It was for kids who were incarcerated.
Okay.
Wow.
It was they were in high school, and what I found is if I gave them respect and they gave me respect, like they were very protective. It was the complete opposite. I never had to call the cops on them. Like it was just something about earning their respect because it was all about respect. If you didn't respect them, they were Bloods, Crips, Latin Kings, whatever. Then you'd be, excuse my language, you'd be screwed. But it was almost like it was the coolest experience because they really became like. I remember one time I was walking out of the school and they said, Miss Jacobs, get inside. It's like they protected me from anything bad happening because we had that bond and they knew I was in their corner. So, maybe it was also, and I was one of the only white teachers in that school. So it was really interesting that they were like, wow, you're a nice white lady. Like it just, and I never had to call the police. Never, never, never. And I even used to bring my 3-year-old and they would like keep her artwork. It was like it was bizarre. I don't even know how to describe why that happened. And I have a tougher time in other schools where it's, affluent kids. So I don't know why that, I'm just curious why that was so different than my experience now because I'm subbing a lot. I'm that sub, and they're great and the little ones are very loving. But once I get into the older classrooms, it's really hard to keep them, I'm that person that they're like, yay, period off. So I wonder how, anybody got any advice? Like how to keep them, I don't know, because I want to do what I'm supposed to do, but they don't want to listen.
Yeah.
And yet these kids that you'd be afraid of listen. So it's bizarre. Go ahead, somebody.
Anybody?
I don't think it's you, Tammy. I just think that anytime students get a sub, they just think it's free time.
Yeah.
I don't think it's you at all.
Yeah, but I just think it's just interesting that demographic was so terrific to work with, and then I'm in another environment where you would think it would be so much easier, and it's not. I don't know.
You were probably the only person in their lives that were trying to help them. They don't run into a lot of people who were, really invested in helping them. That's probably why they did that.
Yeah.
Street kids can spot a phony in a second.
Yeah, and I trusted
and when they
them.
find somebody who's not like that and who is really, trying to help them, they hold on to people like that.
True.
Yeah.
All right, but the advice, where's the advice for subbing?
Subbing?
I have to sub for a whole nother year.
Go to
Sub
Modell's
for
and
those
buy a
type
bat.
That's
Wait,
funny.
their Sports Authority has 50 to 70%.
Yeah, they're closing though.
Right.
It stinks. That's why I'm becoming a certified teacher.
That's great.
So
Anybody else have to do that?
well, I mean, you know what? You have to be that. There's nothing wrong with you as a substitute teacher actually teaching.
Yeah. The little ones will let me do that. The little ones, they'll let me teach. I can do a whole lesson plan.
I think if you're going into like middle school, I find middle school like 5th, 6th. I remember when I taught social studies in 6th grade, it was like I'd rather teach kindergarten. My sister teaches high school, and she thought it was nuts. But even as a sub, especially if maybe you're a long-term sub, or even if that day, I think for like the middle school, if you just do exactly what we were saying earlier, go in honest and say, listen, I know I'm the sub. This is not hangout period. Let's, and actually be straightforward in the beginning.
Yeah.
You might gain that little respect. Maybe not everybody, but a few kids, it'd be like, oh, well, she's really not that bad. She's actually kind of cool. And just lay it on the line. Put the onus on them. Give them the empowerment. Make them think they're in control when in reality you're the one really pulling the strings. And just be like, listen, I know I'm the sub. You don't want to be here. I'm here. But you know what? Let's make the best of this 40 minutes, whatever the heck the period is, and let's get it done.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. You might get that one period that they'll be like, oh, wow, you know what? She's pretty cool. I like her. And especially if you're a regular, that's
this is my talent.
strategy.
Like, they're so dumb because I bump into their parents all the time. Like you said at the swim club. I'm like, really? Because I'm going to see you on the corner, ding dong.
Yeah. Well, even more so. Even if you are from town, even more so, I think it'd be even cool to be like, oh, wow, she was my teacher. She's actually pretty cool. If you're just like, you're like them, but you're not. You still have to have that authority and that respect, that underlying. But just, I would be like straightforward and just come out and.
Because I'm new to this. I'm new,
Yeah.
So
That was my approach. I mean, that's something to try. See what
I'm
happens.
gonna try it. I try and stay away from middle school. I try and just do elementary. But when I'm stuck there, I feel like I'm drowning.
I get
What
you.
is wrong with middle school? That's what I was interested in. Is that terrible?
Oh, the worst.
But why?
I loved being in middle school the most.
Oh my God.
I know.
It's a very interesting group, age group.
How, like,
Yeah,
just a couple of things. Like, what is good and what is bad? Like, why is it so bad?
I'll defer to the class first before I answer.
I think that's like, if you think about it from a biological standpoint, they're going through puberty and their hormones are all over the place, and they're just in that really awkward stage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just.
Sometimes they're obnoxious, they're condescending. The girls are catty, and it's like, oh, you know, I'd rather have a classroom full of boys than have a classroom full of girls, especially in middle school. I mean, at least the boys, at some point, you can kind of control them because it's just more, they want to be adults, but at the same time, they're a little childish. They're still, their mind is still in that childish. The girls, it's all about, you know, who's going who, and you know, I'll give you an example. It's funny. I taught kindergarten a few years back, and in kindergarten, I found I had all these little girls, and they come to school, but at the end of the day, I had to put my money where my mouth was, and it was like, well, I'm having a party, and you're not invited to my party, and you're not going to my birthday party, and you're not going to my play date, and they're 5 and 6 years old. It drove me nuts, and I would lose control until finally.
I'll kick my daughter's ass.
Well, you know what I did? So what I ended up doing was, like, at one point I just stopped the lesson. I'm like, listen, you know what? None of you are going to my party. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, none of you are going to my birthday party. And they're like, Miss Olivet, you have a I'm like, yeah, my birthday party is going to be a Mulan party, because it was all about who's having the princess and who's having this. And they were like, Mulan's not a princess. I'm like, Mulan is like an awesome princess, because not only is she like the princess, but she can kick the boys' butts. Well, at the end of the day, I said, all right, so then this is what we're going to do. If we all stop, I don't want to hear about birthday parties. And if everybody's good for the rest of the year, then you can all come to my birthday party. Well, guess what happened at the end of the year? I had to have a birthday party.
Okay.
So at the end of the year, it was like, and whenever anybody would bring it up, it was like, oh, you know, it got to the point that they like, don't do it, because we can't go to Miss Olivet's birthday party. So at the end of the year, I had a birthday party at the Burger King Fun House in Lyndhurst, and like all the kids came, and it was like the parents were involved, and they just came. We had cake, and it was just like a play date with Miss Olivet and my aide at the time. But I had to end up putting my money where my mouth was. But that was like a creative example of how 5 and 6 year olds, they were like catty, and it was all over like play dates and who had the best princess, and but you know what? It came through, and it ended up being a cool, and it was actually fun. And like those students now, I want to say, are like sophomores in high school.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And then when I see them, they're still like, remember your birthday party? It was like, yeah, the Mulan party. That was a cool party. But I see it not just middle school. You see it at a younger age too.
Yeah, and that's, you know, but again, I mean, that's, yeah, you know, you put your money in your mouth, but that's certainly something that they'll remember, and I think that's you know, that goes far beyond what you could potentially, you know, teach in a classroom or in a book, you know.
Yeah.
It is. It's and that's.
That was my form of my classroom management. I just came, it was like, you know, how am I going to get these girls to just quit it already? It was like ridiculous.
And that's tough, because, and you know, and Maria's, you know, comment about middle school, it is a very, I think I mean, their hormones are all over the place. It's their development, and really, and again, like when people my age hit puberty, and now I see kids today, it's earlier, it's much earlier.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say, is middle school like 11, 10, 11, or what is middle school?
I mean, I consider middle school like 6th grade to 8th grade. 7, 8.
Yeah,
Like 11 years old, I would say. You turn
11, 12,
as an
13.
11-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's they're going through.
Wow.
I couldn't grow facial hair until I was a sophomore in high school, and there are kids that are coming into Bergen, you know, after right at summer of 8th grade that have a beard already. So like, I mean, puberty's happening earlier, so those hormonal changes are happening earlier. So you've got these kids that are just a hot mess, and I look at them, I'm like, please God, tell me I didn't act like that when I was their age, and I probably was, but it's like, and I'm like, it's a phase. They're going to outgrow it, and these kids are probably going to be great when they're in their 40s, but right now, they're just a hot mess.
Obnoxious.
So
Exactly.
have you seen that? So since you've taught for a long time, have you seen that change, like the behavior? Or I mean, people always say, "Oh, kids have no respect anymore." Do you see that in the classroom too? Have you noticed a significant change?
Yes, I see it as everybody, and I think this is like one of my life's theories. Everyone just goes through different stages of immaturity. I don't think you ever really get totally mature. We just are less immature than we were when we were younger. Like I still consider myself probably highly immature, but I'm just not as immature as I was, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But I think that is there a big difference when they get to high school? Like now I look at our boys at Bergen. It's an all boys school. I look at that, and then I look at maybe where if they were co-ed, would they be different? I mean, our kids have, now they're all boys, so there's no concept of hygiene. There's no concept of bodily noises, that kind of stuff. But
If you
then
know
I
Matt
see.
Iden, he went to your school. He definitely took care of himself. Matthew Iden?
I'm sorry.
You know Matt Iden?
Yeah, you just graduated this year.
Yeah, he definitely took care of himself. He's a youth member at my
There's
church.
one. So there's but I do what really kind of concerns me is when I see that type of behavior in a co-ed environment, like with the boys, for example. You got a boy who's not showering for like 3 days or something, and I'm like, you're around girls, like, what?
Why?
Okay,
Yeah.
well, why shouldn't he take care of himself when he's around boys? This is obviously growing up in a completely different culture where equality is at a very, very, we don't even have boys and girls go to school. It's illegal. You can't even have it. I mean, it doesn't exist, really.
Yeah.
But so this whole concept, I don't get it. Why should boys and girls be treated differently? Why should a boy not care about himself when he's around other boys? I don't get that. This is the whole thing with treating women, boys and girls differently in the classroom. I mean, I don't get it.
And maybe I should backtrack a little bit, because one of the things you'll find, I'm trying to frame this. One of the things, and I'm cognizant of the time too, and we're going to start to wrap it up. One of the things that I think is a big indicator. I don't believe there are bad kids. There's no such thing as a bad kid. They're product of their environment. It could be the kids they're with, the kid they hang out with. They have a learning disability, whatever the case is. A kid isn't bad because they want to be bad.
Right.
There are certain telltale signs that are huge red flags, and one of them is hygiene.
Yeah.
Okay? When you have a boy or a girl that does not take care of him or herself, there's something going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you're setting yourself up to ridicule,
Correct.
And I know the kids in my school can be ruthless to one another, and it's and even I know I'm like, and you're like, you don't want to say it, but like, who is that? Like, that's disgusting. And then I'm like, is it me? But you think about, like, that's to me a telltale sign. Everything okay? Everything okay at home? Everything, because, why, Mr. Spiegel? Can I be frank? Sure, why? You reek. What do you, like, I generally kids that have got everything, under control will bathe themselves. So to me, that's one of those, and that's why I bring it up. It's a Maslow thing. When you look at the Maslow triangle, all those basic things on the bottom: food, drink, clothing, shelter, sex, all that kind of stuff. If you're meeting your Maslow needs, then you can go after your Bloom stuff. But if you're not hitting the basic stuff on the bottom of the Maslow triangle, there's an issue, and that's one of them. And hygiene is one of them. So that's why I bring it up. Is as a teacher, when I see things like that, I'm like, all right, that's it, right? Maybe it was a bad day, whatever. But then it's like when I see kids that look like they rolled out of bed, okay, what's going on? You know, like you look like you rolled out of bed. You know.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I'm a court-appointed special advocate in Hudson County for kids in the foster care system, and that's obviously one of the things that we look for. And that is the signs that, you know, when we do go out and visits, and we do, and that's one of the reasons that we actually contribute to school clothes for the kids. So, you know, to make sure that they have proper clothing to go to kids, because if you move from foster home to foster home, a lot of times you don't even get to bring your stuff. You know, you're supposed to, but it doesn't always happen. So that is one of the things that we really, you know, obviously that's a big sign. But yeah, no, just it's this is a much bigger discussion with the whole way. I mean, there was a chapter in the book about how teachers address boys and girls, and how, you know, girls are supposed to sit and be quiet, and boys are, you know, being, you know, rewarded for being loud and noisy, and that's just how boys act. I mean, that's a completely different discussion. But
I agree. And you know what? Spending 4 years in an all girls high school and now spending 12 years in an all boys high school, you know, I do see that, and it was a very eye opening experience for me to be in an all girls school, to kind of see, you know, see things differently.
Yeah, and I am so interested in learning the why it is, you know, what the point of separating the genders are, because where I've come from, if you're not, you know, if you don't learn how to interact with boys and girls when you're a kid, how are you possibly going to, you know, function in society if you're not used to in a workplace? I mean, that's why.
Where are you from?
Sweden.
Sweden?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's I'm coming. This is why I'm so interested in learning everything about, you know, the system here.
I have so much family in Sweden.
Yeah, and a lot of people do. So when I grew up, everybody took wood shop, everybody took sewing, everybody had to learn how to cook. And I mean, there's still a lot of issues with gender, but I just don't understand, if you are raised in a school system that is just boys, and then you get into the workplace, how are you going to function with a female boss or female colleagues if you've never been in a natural environment?
Yeah,
that is a good question.
Yeah, I just don't understand it, and I know that that the whole issue of distraction, that you can learn more maybe, and I've heard that argument, but there's so much that I want to learn about that. So just a point.
No,
I mean,
it's fair. That's a fair statement.
I mean, that's more of a personal choice for parents. You know what I mean? It's not a cultural thing. I think it's just parents' preference.
Yeah. But I think even more so now, I agree with Maria. I mean, when I went to school, we had home ec, we had shop, we had things like that. You really don't. I don't really see that in schools nowadays, unless it's like a vocational school and you're specifically going for a vocation or something, you know, along those lines. But like home ec, shop, that's not taught, at least we
don't have that anymore in public high school that I know of.
Yeah, I don't remember. We don't have that. My kids didn't have that. You know, they went to public grammar school, but they didn't have that here either. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
I don't know why we've deviated from that.
Yeah. Sure.
I think it's a cause for a lot of
pass the math test. That's why.
There you go.
True.
That's why we've got a lot of problems now with kids that, you know, can't handle, you know, even home management, you know, being by themselves, doing things on their own. Lots of that stuff was taught in school when I went to school. It was part of a class, you know. So I agree.
Sure. Well,
so the answer is I don't know, Maria.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Well, we went a little bit late. I apologize. I think this discussion was fruitful, and like I said, it took a, you know, it always takes a, you know, unexpected turns and all that. So it looks like no one fell asleep. I'm thankful for that. I will put the link with the class up probably tomorrow. Just as a reminder, after this week, you're free and clear except for that LD webinar. So that's your main task for the next 2 weeks. After you've got the discussion forum stuff done in the Twitter, keep working. It's that, and it's the webinar. So
thank you.
Hey, Al.
Yep.
Can I do mine on autism?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's fine. That's as long as it's on the like the pre-approved list that's on the course outline, then that's fine. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, there were other people. I wanted to do others, but they were taking, so it's okay if I take autism.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect.
Yep. So, if you need me in the next, I mean, I'm still local. I'm not venturing anywhere. So, you know, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you need anything, if you need me to look at anything, that kind of stuff. I will tell you that grades are due within 72 hours of the last day of class, which I think the last day officially is August 4th?
Fifth? Fifth?
Fifth?
Oh,
Okay. So I would anticipate by that following Monday I'd have to supply grades. So if you look like you're running into a problem where it's like you're not going to make it, let's talk about incompletes and that stuff, because that's that's a 6-week grace-free kind of extension, or penalty-free I should say extension, if you need that. But keep in touch with me if you need it. Otherwise, thank you for a good discussion.
thank
I
you.
if you need me for anything else, I'll hang around for a minute. Otherwise, I bid you good night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Al, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so 2 things now that I have you there.
Yep.
If we can't upload our webinar to YouTube, can we email it to you?
The easiest thing to do is probably to put it in your Google Drive and then share it with me. Because you've got, if you sign into your St. Peter's email, and then after you do that, when you do that, if it's in any Gmail, on the top, the bar, like right next to where your profile picture would be, there's 9 little, it looks like a tic-tac-toe board, there's 9 dots, and if you click that, you click on Drive, and then you would take your final file, drag it into the Google Drive. It'll upload there, and then when you right-click on it, hit share, and then put in my email address, and then I'll be able to see it. And this way, I don't have to worry about a file that's too big to email or anything like that. So that's the easiest way to do it.
And will you confirm that you've seen us on the chat thing or not? When will you let us know?
What do you mean?
E-chat thing, the Twitter chat.
Twitter? I will look again in the next couple of days. I generally every couple of days I'll look and see, but I know I've seen a bunch of notifications, so I have to look at that. So yeah, in the next couple of days I'll do that again. I think
I'm doing it right.
Yeah, I last looked on Monday and I didn't I didn't see it, so or whatever I saw I put up, so I have to look. So
all right,
I will.
thank you so much.
I promise.
I
All right. Good.
All
Good
right.
night, Tammy.
Bye.
So Sean, you're not the Sean Fallon that works at Paramus Catholic.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. Ironically, I thought you were, like, wow, there's a Sean M. Fallon that, and then you said Dickinson. I'm like, wow. So the email I sent you about ExamSoft, just ignore that.
Okay.
So there's probably another Sean Fallon out there that's intended for it, but that's obviously not you. So
I had a question about uploading. I did a PowerPoint, and I'm going to do voiceover the PowerPoint. That can be my webinar, right?
Yeah, if you want to do it that way, it shouldn't be.
What other formats do you
Well,
have?
I mean, you could do a Google Hangout just like this, where you talk, you share the screen, you put the PowerPoint up, and you talk over it. You could do that. I just used Camtasia. You get a 30-day free trial of Camtasia. It puts a watermark on the back, but I don't care. I think that's cool because you like the way I had done one for this company, ExamSoft. So I recorded my audio, and then you could put in video and still pictures and all kind of stuff. And it's kind of like Photoshop. You put layers upon layers, and I thought that's pretty good. You could use like iMovie. You could use Windows Movie Maker.
Yeah, I tried. I have a new MacBook, but I'm trying to mess around with iMovie, but I just haven't had much luck.
You can. I think for something like this, I would personally say download Camtasia, use the trial version for 30 days. I think it's not too difficult to use.
And so I can have my slides pop up on the screen, and I can just.
Well, yeah. All you do is you start recording, put your presentation in full screen. You talk over it. When you're done, you stop the recording. Then you could trim the ends. Actually, you could also do it in QuickTime Player too. QuickTime Player is another alternative. Same thing. You can trim the ends. I only say Camtasia because I've just used it and I was very impressed with it. But the idea is that I hit play and then I watch the video. I'm not like advancing your slides or having to hit the bullhorn to hear you speak. So I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, Sean. No problem. Take it easy. Yep.